Welcome once again to Musings by Danon. Recently, Jeff, aka Mother's Basement, had a video where he gave his top 10 isekai of all time. I loved his video, and you should go watch it. But the problem is, Jeff is mostly an anime watcher, and generally not a light novel reader. I may have convinced him to give one a shot, but we'll have to wait and see. Regardless, I felt it was important to do a video talking about my top 10 isekai. However, because we are degenerate light novel readers on this channel, I won't be mentioning any series that has an adaptation, including ones that have an adaptation announced. Also, and I know it's annoying to keep hearing this, but statistically, if I don't ask you to like and subscribe, the video gets fewer subscribers. Now, I've talked about all of these series before, but I wanted to recommend them again. I'm hoping at least some of them get an anime adaptation, but some will be really hard to adapt. We'll have to wait and see. Let me know in the comments if there's any that you think I should do a deep dive of. Without further ado, let's get into our list, starting with number 10. Monster Tamer is one of those everyone gets isekai series. An entire high school, including the teachers, winds up in another world deep in a forest. There are no goddesses to explain things, no human settlements nearby, and no RPG-style status screens to explain their new cheat powers. Nothing but a forest full of monsters. Of course, some of the kids realize they have powers, and a hierarchy is soon formed, with 3 tiers. The teachers are instantly ignored, and those with actual power are now in charge. The strongest kids set off in search for signs of civilization, while the middle-powered kids stay behind to protect the weakest kids. Of course, as soon as the strong kids leave, the middle kids turn on the weak ones and turn them into slaves. A slaughter soon happens, and many of the kids take off to try their luck surviving in the forests, including our main character. Eventually, he finds out that he's a monster tamer, and winds up with a harem of monster girls. This series is basically Lord of the Flies as an isekai, only instead of just murder, there are other bad things that happen, especially when you mix out-of-control boys with girls. But talking about that will demonetize this video, so I'll just let you use your imagination. I did want to make you aware though, because not all readers are ready for that type of content. Fortunately, those acts are portrayed as evil, and our main character has no problem punishing his schoolmates for committing them. Lazy Dungeon Master is a delightful and complete series that probably appeals more to Americans than it does to my European viewers. After all, our main character loves nothing more in this world than feet. Except maybe sleep. Allow me to set the scene. Dungeons exist. The core of a dungeon serves as the beating heart of a being brought into existence by the Dark God. Each dungeon is also a being. A dragon, a phoenix, a snake, a demon, a human, or any number of other kinds of creatures. One day, Kima Masude gets summoned to save a young dungeon from some bandits who had taken up residence. Only, he'd rather sleep. But since he's now considered a summoned monster in service to the dungeon core, if the bandits accidentally destroy her core, he dies too. As it turns out, this young dungeon is an idiot. Her dungeon is a single corridor with a single room, and she only spawns goblins one at a time. Can Kima come up with a strategy to save his life? Or will they forever be at the mercy of bandits? This is a completed 17-book series with a host of characters, an absurd amount of shenanigans, and all the ecchi moments you could hope for in a comedy isekai. For example, the succubi who join his side serve as nuns, and their sexy demon girl auras morph their nun habits into lingerie. No, I'm not joking. I'd probably start going to church if that were the case. Anyway, if you like your stories serious, stay away. But if you enjoy a fun romp, be sure to check this one out. The easiest way to describe this next series is Minecraft Isekai. Survival in Another World with My Mistress is written by the same author as another author on this list that we'll get to later on. This one is the more serious of the two, believe it or not. Our main character, Kosuke, suddenly finds himself in a fairly dark fantasy world. Elves, beast folk, and various other demi-humans are used as slaves by the human empire. The Dark Princess, Sylphie, is the leader of a group of refugees and finds Kosuke wandering around the forest. Because she doesn't trust humans, and rightly so, she puts a collar around Kosuke. Now, Kosuke doesn't really mind being enslaved to Sylphie. After all, his other choice was death at her hands. And he soon gets freed and becomes her ally. Now, I mentioned how this series is basically the Minecraft Isekai. Kosuke discovers that he can treat this entire fantasy world, a world with races, magic, crafting, as if it were Minecraft. He's able to clear fields, place blocks in midair, cause food to grow from newly plowed fields, and even craft weapons and potions. Once Sylphie and the rest of the rebels realize how much power Kosuke brings to their cause, they soon go to war against the humans. Not to conquer them, but to free their friends from slavery. Now, there is a manga version of this series, and it is a lot more raunchy than the main series. Sylphie and Kosuke eventually enter into a romantic relationship. In the light novels, the sex scenes are boot scenes. I suppose I should explain that term to new viewers. Captain Kirk is kissing the hot alien girl, fade to black. You return to the scene and Kirk is pulling on his boots, while the hot alien girl is asleep under the covers. You know what happened, but there's no description. It's not important to know how it happened, but the fact that it did happen is important to the story and establishing what stage our characters are at in their relationship. That's how the light novel is for this series. The manga, on the other hand, is not so subtle about it. So if you're thinking about getting your teenager a cool Minecraft Isekai story, maybe stick to the light novel version instead of the manga. The world's strongest rearguard, Labyrinth Country's Novice Seeker, is a much lighter and fluffier isekai. Yes, our main character quickly winds up with a harem, but the girls all agree to keep their hands to themselves to avoid any disruptions of party dynamics. This doesn't mean the series isn't ecchi, but it is a rather interesting take on the isekai genre. Let me explain. Labyrinth Country is a giant city with 8 districts, each of which is kept separate based on the strength of the labyrinth seekers who inhabit that particular district. The thing that makes this series interesting is that most of the population in Labyrinth Country are either people from Earth who have been reincarnated, or their descendants. When you first arrive in Labyrinth Country, you're directed to the guild office, where you can register as a seeker. Part of that process is picking your class. But unlike most RPGs, you don't really have a limit on your choices. You can be any class you dream up. Our main character, Arihito, doesn't know what he wants to do, but he does overhear someone talking about how important rearguards are. So when he signs up, he puts his class down as rearguard. This causes a bit of a system glitch, but now he's basically overpowered. Arihito's powers now all stem from being behind his allies, or enemies. He can buff them so they take less damage, deal more damage, or debuff his enemies so they're confused and don't attack. Eventually, he winds up with an entire party, including his former boss, Igarashi. Igarashi chose the job Valkyrie, and although she loves being in the front line and stabbing enemies with her spear, she's not very happy with the armor she winds up getting, no matter how good the stats are. But as the party travels the dungeon, they start to uncover secrets. Secrets that could shake the very foundation of this country. Again, this is one of those fun series that is a delight to read. You've got a bunch of interesting characters with a pretty straightforward plot. And because they're the main characters of the story, weird stuff keeps happening to them. If you're wanting a fun isekai with a wholesome main character and a great selection of waifus, you'll enjoy this series. Next up, Disciple of the Lich, or How I Was Cursed by the Gods and Dropped into the Abyss. I got 2 words to convince you to read this series. Tsundere Lich. Imagine a fantasy world created by the gods for entertainment purposes. Think reality TV for the divine. Our main character, Kanata, gets summoned to this world for the sole purpose of entertaining the Pantheon. When he is asked what boon he would like, he requests to go home. After all, he's worried about his cat. Of course, this pisses the gods off, so our poor main character is thrown into the dungeon known only as the Abyss. Now, this is one of those worlds with RPG elements, stat screens, levels, etc. Our main character is a level 1 with no powers. His first encounter with a monster involves him losing an arm before he can react, because the monster is several hundred levels higher than he is. As he's about to die, along comes a girl with white hair and heterochromatic eyes. After saving him and using time-bending magic to restore his arm, she supposes she might as well save him. After all, his screams were annoying. But it's not because I like you or was getting lonely or anything. Lunare is a lich with so much power that she's been hiding down in the abyss from the gods themselves. After single-handedly killing the previous demon lord, she was transformed into a lich. The undead aura coming off of her is so strong it causes lesser beings to flee in fear. But for some reason, Kanata is unaffected by it. Lunare doesn't want Kanata staying down there forever, so she decides to train him. For the first 200 levels or so, he fights golems that she creates as target dummies. Then, she decides to take him into the mirror. It's an alternate dimension with demons and unholy horrors that start around level 600 and go up from there. All Kanata has to do is tag one with a spell, then Lunare can finish it off. In other words, she power levels him, day after day forcing him to fight horrors beyond the understanding of mere mortals. Until he's about level 6000. Then, reluctantly, she allows him to go free into the world. And the first people he meets are some high-level wanted bandits, one of whom is so feared in the world because he's level 180. Kanata's confused, because there's no way Lunare would lie to him about his level needing to be that high to survive, right? Someone's gotta be pulling his chain. This is a delightful series about a boy who is way too strong for his own good, traveling around and accidentally saving the world. You know the meme, I did all the side quests first, so I guess I'll go do the first dungeon now? Think that, but as a light novel. With the Tsundere Lich, of course. On a different note, Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter would solidly be considered a josei isekai. I've explained this before, but just for you new viewers, Japanese media is usually broken up into 4 categories. This is more pertinent in manga than in light novels, but the idea is still prevalent. These 4 categories are shonen, shoujo, seinen, and josei. Shonen content is geared towards boys, usually aged 12 to 20, while shoujo content is made for girls in the same category. Seinen is for men, and josei is for women. Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter is absolutely written for women. I'm not saying this is a negative thing, so please don't misunderstand me. It is a story written for adults rather than children. The characters are well written and engaging, they work together to overcome challenges, the world building and plot are complex and interesting, and the romance is a nice slow burn. Also, when I say this story was for adults, I don't mean ecchi. In fact, other than some gentle teasing between friends, there is nothing ecchi in this series at all. I suppose I should mention the plot so you know what you're in for. This is a villainous otome isekai series and, in my opinion, the best one. Start with the standard humiliating scene where the engagement to the prince is broken, cue up her father being mad at her for the whole ordeal, finally getting banished from the capital, only to actually return home and take over running the duchy in her father's name. The first thing she tackles? Infrastructure. She then moves on to tax reform, education, medicine, and trade. If you enjoy A Sentence of a Bookworm and How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom, you will absolutely love Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter. One of the first isekai series I discovered on my own was Now I'm a Demon Lord, Happily Ever After with Monster Girls in My Dungeon, and it is still one of my favorites. Our main character suddenly wakes up in another world. He finds himself in a strange room with nothing but a crystal ball, the new core of his dungeon. Yuki discovers that he is a demon lord, and decides to go exploring. And the first thing he encounters is the supreme dragon, Lephasios. Yuki saves his hide from incineration with the one thing that almost all girls are weak to: chocolate. Lethe decides to live with Yuki, and they soon adopt a vampire girl. Before you know it, the dungeon is a lively and fun place with beast girl maids, a hot spring, and closets full of board games. Once empty halls are now filled with laughter, and the magic of the almighty supreme dragon is used to create snow for sledding on rather than raising cities. But when their happiness is interrupted, when someone chooses to invade their territory, they still respond like the monsters they are and slaughter the invaders. This series is a great mashup of just fun shenanigans and violence. When Aluna, the aforementioned vampire girl, gets kidnapped by slavers, Lethe calls in her people to scare the nearby city of humans. And Yuki has no problem slaughtering the perpetrators. So if you have a problem with a bit of gore in your isekai, maybe skip this one. But if you like seeing evil people punished for their misdeeds and enjoy stories about found families, you should seriously pick up Now I'm a Demon Lord, happily ever after with monster girls in my dungeon. Reborn as a space mercenary, I woke up piloting the strongest starship is a series I've talked about on this channel a lot. Ryuto, the same author as Survival in Another World with My Mistress, is a self-proclaimed game enthusiast who loves space-based MMOs and survival games. One of the best pieces of advice you can give to aspiring writers is to write what you know. And since this particular author has vast knowledge of both Minecraft and Elite Dangerous, those are the two games that his series are based on. Our main character, Captain Hero, wakes up on his beloved ship, the Krishna, floating in the vastness of space. His star charts are empty, meaning he's adrift in the void with no way of knowing where anything is. Fortunately, well, for him, not for the pirates that show up, he encounters some other ships and is able to ascertain his whereabouts from their salvaged ship's computers. Through dumb luck or just accidental main character syndrome, he winds up with a pair of beautiful girls on his ship, and the three of them decide to go off and have adventures together. Now, this series is basically a slice of life with a bit of action now and then. More time is spent talking about different food than the fight scenes. It is also a slow burn, as we get to know the cast of characters, their quirk, as well as their secrets. I adore this series, and tend to drop everything when a new book comes out. I'm also enjoying the audiobooks. Now, as a heads up, this is not a hard science fiction series. Technology just works, lasers go pew-pew, pirate ships explode. This is more of a space opera than a proper science fiction series. More Star Wars than Star Trek. The other space opera style isekai that I'm in love with is I'm the Evil Lord of an Intergalactic Empire. This series is written by the same author as Trapped in a Dating Sim, The World of Otome Games is Tough for Mobs. Our main character lay dying of malnutrition after being betrayed by his wife. As it turns out, she and her lover embezzled company funds and pinned her husband as the patsy. Now crushed by the cruelty of those he once trusted, the MC is given the opportunity by a powerful entity known as the Guide to reincarnate into another universe. Decision made, he wakes up as a baby, the only son of a count that runs a backwater planet in the Empire. At the tender age of 5, he is handed the keys to the kingdom. His parents then abscond to the Imperial capital planet in order to party and live a life of debauchery. Liam, our main character, decides that he's done being stomped on. He's done being taken advantage of. No longer will he be a victim. This time he will do as he pleases, and he will live life as a villain. Liam will dedicate his life to becoming an evil lord. The problem is, evil is relative. The nobility in this universe is so incredibly debauched that Liam's idea of having 1,000 women in his harem is considered prudish and conservative. Only throwing lavish parties once a month is boring. And actually paying off your debts is unheard of. Liam wants so badly to put his boot on his people's neck. He rules over a whole planet after all. But his family's been crushing this planet for centuries, to the point that his people live in shacks like medieval peasants. So the first thing Liam does is build up his planet's infrastructure. Roads, hospitals, education, power, and quality of life. His plan is eventually to squeeze them and take back all the wealth for himself, but I'm 6 books into the series and that hasn't happened yet. Well, book 7 just came out, so we'll have to wait and see. Fans of this channel already know that my favorite Isekai series is min-maxing my TRPG build in another world, preaching the good word of Mr. Henderson. That statement includes series that have been animated. I put this series above Re:Zero, Slime, or even Konosuba. Yes, it may be niche, but it is my niche. Our main character dies of cancer and is given the chance to reincarnate. His greatest love in life, his obsession, was playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Decades before Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest changed people's perception of what an RPG was, Gary Gygax and friends took wargaming and shrank it down. Instead of controlling armies, you controlled a single character. Small missions, friends and companions trying to stop the goblins or to save the princess, or slay the dragon, and now Eric of Königstuhl, the 4th son of Johannes and Hannah, has the opportunity to build his character the way he wants it. Unfortunately for his enemies, Eric is a munchkin, a power gamer, someone who had such bad luck with dice that he had to learn how to craft the most powerful characters at the table just to survive to the end of the campaign. And apparently, his bad luck came with him in this life as well. Therefore, Eric had to come up with ways so that the dice had no say on the outcome. He would just have to think up strategies that would overwhelm his opponents. And he does so. Now, there are 2 things I love about this series that set it apart from most other Isekai series I've read. First of all, our main character was in his mid-40s when he died, so he doesn't think like a child. Sure, he acts childish at times, but his body is that of a child, and hormones go crazy when you're a teenager. Because our main character was an adult, the perspective is that of an adult as well. We spend a lot of time inside of Eric's head as he contemplates his actions and tries to determine the best outcome. Not just for him, but for his friends and family as well. So, if this series were a manga, it would be published in a seinen magazine, not a shonen. The other thing that sets this series apart is the world building. No other series has come close to how interesting, connected, and in-depth this world is. You see faint traces of the world in the first book, but it isn't until book 4 that you start to see how massive this world is. The history of the Trialist Empire of Rhine is laid out for us in bits and pieces throughout the series, and every morsel of lore plays into the story that is currently happening. No bit of information, no matter how trivial it seems, is useless. Book 9 releases soon, but it seems to be another 2-parter, so I may wait until both parts are out so I can devour both of them together. Did I miss any that are your favorites? Remember, this list consists of light novels that have official releases that also don't have an anime. Obviously, Re:Zero, Slime, and especially Mushoku Tensei would have been on this list, and probably pretty high up as well, but they were disqualified due to having anime adaptations. But if I missed one that you're in love with, tell me about it. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor cutestuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, she can be reached at cutestuff.edits@gmail.com. Link is down below. If you're looking for ways to support the channel directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/Danon. There are several tiers to choose from. You can pick an anime or manga for me to do a video about, or you can join our monthly manga club. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons: Waffles, Jiraiya, Danny, Muffins, Marcus, Brett, Roxy, Sean, Mark, Borgie, Nazwin Midge, Alex, Conga, Aaron, Chris, Robert, Austin, William Pye, Turner, Triz, and Gazeris. You guys are awesome. I post anime or manga videos often, or you can click here to watch additional videos. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time on Musings by Danon.